Sure. I would say that anyone listening that is, things like that what I'm saying is resonating, these enlightening light bulb moments that we've had together are, impactful, and they're always trying to seek to learn and improve themselves. I want to say too, you are also perfect as you are. Just as we need to love our bodies as they are, love ourselves as we are, understand that the fact that you are a seeker is enough. That's enough. You are not a project that needs fixing. You were not born flawed and like somehow you've got to do this and accomplish that. Like, I'm going to India in a month to stay a week in an ashram. I am not going there to completely fix something that is wrong.
What if the truth came in a gel cap and we could just pop it in our mouths and forget about it? Well, it doesn't, and we can't. But we can laugh in the face of reality while plotting our survival. Welcome to the Truth Tastes Funny podcast. I am your host, Hirsch Redpun, and if my guests can handle the truth, so can you. Open wide, folks. Here it comes. I am speaking with Dr. Joy Bracey, and she's a licensed professional counselor with a Doctor of Ed in executive leadership. So she teaches self-love. She teaches self-healing and self-awareness online, in workshops, at retreats, as a coach, speaker, and professor. She also has her own podcast, The Easy Way Out, WEIGH. And that leads us to the conversation that we're going to have about body image, weight loss, obesity, emotional and medical undercurrents that are attached to both of those things. And Dr. Joy Bracey, welcome to Truth Tastes Funny.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. I got to say, I'm most excited about this interview than maybe any other one I've done.
Wow. Oh, thank you. Well, that's so great to hear. And it's great to see you again and to have you on the show now. Well, introduce yourself a little bit to our audience.
Well, it's crazy to even hear that introduction of myself. You know how life is. If you'd have told me, 30 years ago that that's how I would be introduced in 2024, I wouldn't have believed you. I think following the flow of life and doing the next right thing can lead you to amazing things. And so my first thing is that I'm filled with gratitude to where I am in life. The fact that as of today, I've lost 180 pounds, and I have a lot to say about that. And I know that a lot of people are suffering, and I'm so happy to spread the word about the various tools that I've used to get to where I'm at. And I just feel incredibly grateful. But yeah, you pretty much summed it up. I'm a single mom of 4. I teach self-awareness for Columbia University Teachers College. I teach self-love and self-healing and mindfulness online through, Instagram, TikTok, all the places. And I do retreats and speaking and stuff like that about self-love. And truly, I learn by teaching. And so it's been such a gift to me trying to figure out these things and put them into practical terms, and to merge all of this medical information that we now have about obesity and physical health with what I know from 30 years of work in the addiction and mental health field, and what I'm learning about mindfulness and spirituality, and how those 3 things, the mind, body, and spirit, can work together to just transform our lives.
I think actually, Joy, and we may have touched on this when we spoke off camera a few weeks ago, that kind of triptych of medical mindset and spirituality, it's almost as though I feel anyway, and this is just what at my own point of view, that without those three things working in unison, it's so hard to make progress. A question I had for you is, what was the toughest corner that you ever turned?
Oh, even just you asking me that question just hit me with a pang of emotion, just like, because I can pinpoint the very moment. The very hardest thing was the first time I allowed myself to be honest with myself. The moment where I said, okay, my life is not. So I spent, just to give you a bit of background, I grew up in a home with addiction. Things weren't ideal, just as for many of us in Gen X. I was raised to be quiet and cooperative. And I was an overachiever. I grew up trying to people please and be a perfectionist. And I thought that if I was perfect, then maybe things would go right at home. And of course, it's a terrible plan that lots of kids make. And, it didn't work and it still doesn't work. And I hit somewhere around my mid 40s and I had to finally just face the fact that I had done all the things that you're supposed to do in quotation marks. Like I went all the way to the end in school. I raised very good children. I'm at the top of my career as the CEO in a mental health space. I help people with my life. I'm a homeowner. I do all the responsible things. And yet I was in agony a lot of the time, emotional agony. I was in physical agony at 337 pounds and climbing. And I had neglected to be honest with myself about the state of my life for years. And I had been so afraid to admit that, for example, the long-term partnership that I was in was toxic and bad for me, and that the person wasn't a good match and he wasn't kind or loyal to me. Admitting that meant having to make a change, admitting that there were consequences that I was paying, dear ones, every day for being 337 pounds was so hard. And it was absolutely the hardest part because I had embraced body positivity. I was like, I was so sick of losing weight and gaining it, losing it and gaining it. I was like, I'm never again. I'm just going to be fat and happy. Just like, leave me alone. I love it. I love my body. And then when aging hits, you have to face the reality that that isn't exactly true, that there will be consequences. The piper will come for payment. And I just, being honest with myself about all those things was absolutely the hardest part. Losing 180 pounds hasn't been easy, but it was much harder. I so love and appreciate 337-pound Joy for being able to stop and look at herself and say, what life have you built? What did you want to be different? What life can you build every single day? What are you doing? Where are you and where do you want to be? And what do you need to do differently to get there? Like that was so hard.
Yeah, it is hard. In the aging process, that is a kind of a marvel in a way. I every day I'm 57, and every day that goes by, I feel like I'm learning something new, or I'm maturing at a rate that does that make sense? Like I
Yes.
feel I had this recent kind of epiphany that it wasn't so much about how I looked, it was about how I felt and how my health was. And it's still a journey, but your body's slow, you metabolize slower, everything's harder you go to the gym all this time, and the results aren't as visible, and you have all this stuff. So all the external stuff takes longer to accomplish. But then I just kind of realized, I don't need to think about that stuff. It's what I'm doing and how I'm feeling. Those two things. What am I doing? How am I feeling? And then how am I looking, or what is it, what is the goal, or how much do I weigh, is like not front and center in my mind anymore, which I imagine, we could say it's an issue of vanity not playing as much of a role, but it's also just like getting real. Like you talk about being honest with yourself. So once you were really honest with yourself, what were the first steps that you had to take?
So first, before I even thought when I got honest with myself, I had to open the door to the possibility of attempting to lose weight again. And I say again, because I have done it many times. I lost more weight than you weigh multiple times, like over and over in little increments. I've never lost this much weight before, but I wasn't ready. The first thing was that I felt compelled to host a women's retreat. And this is so funny, but I was like, but I don't know what I'm going to talk about. I'm not, what am I an expert in that people want to hear about? I don't know. And so I started talking to my friends, and the inner critic was something that came strong. And I was like, oh, well, I don't think I have one of those. Let me start researching the inner critic. The academic in me took over, and I'm like reading articles and watching videos, and I'm like, let me see what's going on in my own brain. And of course, when I tuned in, I was quite astounded at the mean voice that was really ruling my brain. And like, for example, my inner critic's favorite thing to say all the time, and still tries to convince me that this is true, it says, "Who do you think you are?" Just like that. Like, just anytime I thought anything good about myself, "Who do you think you are?" And it's absolutely terrible. And so once I realized that I had an inner critic and realized how it was really driving my ship of my life, and that it was driving what I would tolerate in relationships, it was driving what career decisions I made, it was driving what I thought I was capable of and what the limits of my life were, including weight loss. I just knew that this was where I had to put my attention. And so I started teaching. As I was learning lessons, I developed tools for healing the inner critic. And once I did that, once I was able, with enough practice, to quiet that inner critic and quit believing it, tuning into it being the first key to getting rid of it. Instead of what I was doing was eating, shopping, overthinking everything else in my life, doom scrolling to ignore it, to tune it out. So instead, it's counterintuitive, but you have to like hone in and be like, wait a minute, hold on. That mean voice is talking. What is it saying? Why is it saying that? And I always teach people to say the first question you should ask yourself when you hear some mean voice in your head is, what are you afraid or ashamed of? Ask it. What are you afraid or ashamed of? It always boils down to one of those two things. And once you can quiet the inner critic, once I was able to do that, then I started to discover self-love creeping in. And I thought I had already had self-love. People talk about it. I was like, yeah, sure, I love myself. But once I was free of that critic, the self-love began. Then I started developing tools on how to develop a self-love practice. And of course, I was teaching that. And then it became clear to me that I could not love myself and allow myself to stay 337 pounds.
Right.
That knowing that I was losing up to 13 years of my life expectancy, knowing that I couldn't fly on an airplane without an extreme amount of anxiety and shame because of the fat phobic society that we live in. Now, it's not a fat person's fault that it's a shameful and scary experience to fly. It's because we have tiny seats and they're not size inclusive, but it is what it is. So I could not allow myself to live where when I go on a dream vacation, I'm going to the Dominican Republic in a week, and if I want to go ziplining, I can go ziplining. I was turned away in Germany from hang gliding by the German guys who were doing the rigs. They looked at me and started shaking their heads. No, you are too fat for this equipment. And so I knew that loving myself was incongruent with staying in a toxic relationship, with allowing my life to be so limited. So then I started digging in on why was I 337 pounds in the first place when I'm a very active, high achieving, nutritionally minded person. And how did this happen to me? And how do I fix it? What are the medical solutions? What are the emotional undercurrents? Like I just dove in, and that's when the podcast was born. And now here we are a year and a half later, 180 pounds less.
Yeah. And there's a couple things to break down in there. One is the congruency issue. I think that if it may be fair to say that if something is really wrong in one area of your life, all areas of your life probably need a little bit of love, right?
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense? Because there's and it's hard that when that happens, because either something else in your life may already be falling apart and you kind of know it, but you don't want to look at it, which can be the case, right? And you're like, because we don't want to look, it's that way also with criticism, not just self-criticism, but constructive criticism. We often know when somebody gives us constructive criticism, sometimes we know that they're right. And that's how we know it's good advice. But we didn't want to tell ourselves that. We didn't want to cop to it. The other thing is the doom scrolling habit is something that really pertains. It's really something that we don't talk about enough on this show, because it is one of the real factors that in the last 5 years, at least, maybe even more, I think so many of us have become obsessed with bad news. You know, what are your thoughts on that? Elaborate on that a little bit, the doom scrolling.
Yeah. So when I say doom scrolling, I really mean scrolling anything, because truly,
Yeah,
like, almost none of it is positive. I can attest, as a person that puts out content who for healing and helping to people to love themselves more, that really would result in a less consumption of social media. Therefore, the algorithms don't love it. It wants to show us, it'll show us the occasional thing to make us tear up with happiness or crack up laughing. But the most of it is other people's drama, other people's horror stories, terrible news, even the comedians telling us terrible news. It is that. And it occupies the brain. So, I mean, so everyone now has ADHD. And I am sure that if we look at the studies, we would see that there's a direct correlation between this onset of massive diagnoses of adult ADHD, which I have been diagnosed by a psychiatrist with, and the advent of the smartphone. Our attention spans, I mean, we can just have whatever dopamine like enhancing thing that we want, like right
right.
here, right in this little box. And so doom scrolling for me, and I still do it when I am stressed, overwhelmed, when I tune out. I mean, that's where I head. And I even get, sometimes TikTok will be like, you've been on here for a while. So, like, I'm not exempt from this. It's a practice. Some days I do better than others, but it is highly addictive. Also, just the chemicals in our brain are built to seek dopamine, and this little device provides it. And so I'll sometimes it can be very hard to just put it down, and
Yeah.
I don't get so much trapped. A lot of people get trapped in checking their emails and their text. I guess I don't have as much incoming communication as maybe some other people do. For me, it's more about like watching the reels, those little videos that, you can just
Yeah.
watch and watch. And the next one is, it's like gambling. The slot machines, they're so
Right.
effective because you can lose, but then you're going to win. And then it's more effective than if you win every time. That lose, random winning and losing is more effective at getting you to spend your money than if you won every single time, right?
Yeah, that's interesting. That's
Yeah.
really
On social
interesting.
media, same
Yeah.
thing. Crappy video, crappy video, crappy video. This next one is life changing.
This next one has to be good. It's
That's
like
right. So, like, just
after
one
all this.
more. Just one more is going to be the best one ever.
Right. Right. This has to be good. At this point, if I just sit at this slot long enough, it's going to pay off.
That's right.
Just the
We're
odds of,
literally victims
yeah.
to this. So we shouldn't be shaming and blaming ourselves. This is the way it's designed, and they know how our brains work. They are using brain science to develop this stuff. They're not dummies. And
Yeah.
we need these phones. Everything is in there. We have to pay our bills in there, and we pay other people in there, and we keep an eye on the weather, and all the important things that we do need to do are in there. And so we just have to be mindful of how it works and try to work our way out of it. But yes,
Yeah.
that's just another way to distract yourself. Food, shopping, sex, alcohol, other drugs, gambling, any number of distractions will do to keep us from doing the two things that you said, which is being honest with yourself about the condition of your life and accepting the things that you might not like about yourself. Whether
Yeah.
the information, the constructive feedback is coming from others or coming from yourself, we really don't want to hear it. But the good news that I love to share, and I just made a video about this yesterday. I just posted today, I think, today or yesterday, that the cool thing is that the more you love yourself, the easier it is to hear constructive feedback.
Yeah.
Now, when last night, I got and any woman who's listening will relate to this. My son, who is 12th birthday today, while I was gone, put two brand new expensive bras and a brand new bathing suit, brand new favorite. I've lost 180 pounds. I have a brand new bathing suit I'm going to the Dominican Republic with. He put those puppies in the dryer on high while I was gone. I
Yeah.
literally was like in tears. I was so upset. And I was upset with myself for being so upset with him.
Hmm.
because he didn't mean to do that.
Right,
He
right.
didn't know, he's a little bit of a know-it-all, and I was very irritated that he thought he knew how to dry my clothes. But that was just humanity. That's just me being
Yeah.
human. Like, it's just normal to be reactive and upset. And I have to forgive myself. And so I can take that kind of criticism. If he were to say, Mom, you were really mean about that, I would be like, yeah, I was, because I love myself and I have compassion for myself and I have patience and forgiveness for myself. And when you do that, you can actually just be a better person, because you can hear those things about yourself from your own mind, from others, without feeling like you're going to die because you're not perfect.
Yeah. Well, I do have a solution for that situation with the dryer because I'm married. I have three daughters. So I kind of know at this
Yes.
point what I don't know about washing and drying certain clothing, certain articles of clothing. But I think there should be some higher education, some level of certification in washer dryer arts. I
Right.
think that, it's just for a son or a husband. Well, it just seems like you really should just learn what you can, because the tags don't really explain it very well. I always look at tags when we buy something new, and I'm looking at it and it's just a bunch of pictures and a bunch of things, and they're every language but English, and I just really don't, it doesn't say, dude, do
Don't
not
put
put this in
it
the dryer. It has a picture of a dryer. It has something with a picture, and it looks like this. It looks like this. Then
right.
you have something like that. Hold
That's
on, let's see
exactly
that.
right.
Yeah,
Yes.
you have something
Right.
like
What
that.
does that
Something like
mean?
that. And it
Instead
I
of
and it
pink
might
kid?
go like this, or it might go like this. It might have like a 30. It
Right.
might thing like that. I don't know what the hell that means. What does that mean? Don't put this in a bowl and drink it. I don't really
Yeah.
don't know what it
Yeah.
means.
Yeah.
But
If you're
anyway,
30 years old, you can wash and dry.
yeah, when you're 30. Wash when you're 30.
Yeah.
That's what it
I
means.
did sit down with him. I showed him the tags. I explained, I'm like, this fabric cannot. The good news is I have a friend who's in the fashion industry, and she said, put it in woolite and put it on wet. Do not put that thing on dry because you
Ah,
tear the
okay.
fibers. And I was able to get it on wet with wool. She said, woolite is like vitamins for fabric. I was like, okay. So it still fit. It's like $100 bathing suit from Boat
Yeah.
forever to get here. I was so excited. But that's just, that allowance. And the same goes for taking a hard look at myself at 337 pounds and saying, what have you been avoiding for your
Right.
entire adult life that has let this get this out of control? Which is such a painful, I mean, if you think about that, and we all have something, but people with obesity, particularly, are walking around the planet with their insides showing on the outside. Everyone can
Yeah.
see that there's something not right. And some people, there are a few, there are exceptions to the rule. There are some people with obesity who have a purely medical issue going on. There is no complex problems with the food relationship. And I'm happy for those people, but
Yeah.
that's not most of us. This develops in childhood. This is a genetic thing. Obesity is a medical disease that has where your hormones and your reward system with dopamine are out of whack. Your body is working against you when it comes to weight loss. I never ate fast food. At 337
Yeah.
pounds, I never ate fast food. I was fairly active. I overate sugar. I definitely had a sugar addiction. But this started when I was a baby, a baby.
Yeah.
My baby teeth came in black and rotten
Oh,
because
wow.
my mom just left the bottle in my mouth all the time. I had a bottle dripping in
Right.
my mouth
Right.
while I
Yeah.
slept, which to me tells me that my food relationship was messed up and my dopamine reward system was messed up before I was old enough to eat solid food. So I didn't
Yeah.
stand a chance. It's not my fault that on my fifth birthday, when all I got, no presents, no party, nothing, my mom had left me and my brother with my dad, and he brought a pack of those Hostess cupcakes with the
Uh-huh.
twirl
Yeah.
icing. He picked me up from school with one of those double packs of cupcakes, and he said, happy birthday. You can eat both of these. You don't have to give one to your brother. And that sounds
Yeah.
like a sad story, but when I tell you, I remember I was thrilled. I mean, I just
Yeah.
felt like, yes, thank God it's my birthday. I wasn't sad at all. The dopamine was just firing in every direction. The chocolate, the cream, it was all mine. I didn't have to share. So food was love by the time I was 5, period.
Yeah.
So undoing that was not something, I'm a therapist.
Yeah.
I'm well in touch with my feelings. That was not enough to fix it. There was
Yeah.
also a biological thing going on that was beyond my control. And then for me, and this is again for me, but also I suspect for a lot of people, that spiritual aspect keeps me going, because there are days where this is still so hard. And you work, so I've lost 180 pounds. Like if I show you my arms, I work out, I'm strong, but then there's saggy skin and I'm discovering I have all these wrinkles. And it's like, if you're looking for perfection in your body, you're not going to find it and you're going to be disappointed. For me, having that spiritual relationship with myself, knowing that I'm a spirit having a human experience, and that this skin suit is really not that important, but how
Right.
I take care of it matters a lot. Not what it looks like. It's not like my body is for me to use to get around the planet, not for the consumption of others.
Yeah.
So having that spiritual piece for me is really important, but it definitely has taken uncovering the feelings, that food and feelings relationship, the medical part, and for me, that spiritual part, understanding that keeping the focus on what really matters.
Yeah. And that was a great point you made about the purpose of the body, the purpose of it, and to really stop to think about, okay, let's think in terms of the soul. Let's think in terms of that idea of a soul, and what do they want? What do they want me to do? What do they want me to be spending time on? And once you can actually start to spend some time thinking about that higher purpose, that greater purpose, it actually does address some of those other superficial problems. But let's go to a minute just to talk about obesity and body image, body shaming, where when someone is obese, you were talking about exceptions, but let's talk about the health psychology relationship, where someone will say, look, I'm just big and beautiful. I'm just, big boned, or this is, and you don't want people to feel bad because they don't fit that image that's been packaged and sold to us. But
Yeah.
what's the line between the package that's been sold to us that, is just kind of ridiculous and unattainable and not real, and that point at which somebody says, I'm just going to love my body as it is?
Yeah. Well, so that you're so good at this. And that question is really truly why I launched the podcast. Because here I am teaching self-love and at the same time saying I'm going to intentionally lose weight. How do those things, because intentional weight loss in our society has everything to do with how you look, how consumable you are, all of this. I mean, it really is tied up in your value. And I can tell you now, I was wearing a size 28 jeans at my highest. Now I wear a size 6 jeans. People are
Mhm.
nicer to me. I am more valuable in society, period. Men offer to help me at the gym when I'm clearly struggling with a machine, or people open doors for me. Even women are nicer. I mean, it is, but for me, this is such an important question. And that's where I dive into this really hard on the Easy Way Out podcast, because to me, this was so important that I was doing this for the right reasons. And as you said, what is the body for? I say my body is an instrument, not an ornament. And I say two things. You do have to love your body as it is. My daughter made the beautiful point on the podcast, and my favorite episode is with my daughter, who is a larger woman, who is one of these younger, fierce activists, very body positive oriented, and she had a lot of amazing things to say. It's amazing to hear from younger people, like her experience of growing up in a fat family with a fat mom, what my weight loss efforts did to her, what my efforts to help her lose weight when she wanted to did to her. And it was a lot to take, but I think important for people to hear. She said, even if I decide, like today, I start taking care of myself, eating less, moving more, doing all the things people want me to do to lose weight, I'm going to wake up tomorrow in this fat body. A year from now, I'm still going to be in a fat body. I have to love myself like this. And that could not be more true. The truth is, you have to love yourself as you are, fat, skinny, with disabilities, with limitations, with wrinkly skin, with injuries, whatever is going on. Taking ultimate care of your body and loving it and being grateful for it is paramount. And no amount of weight gain or weight loss should change that. For me, one of the things that has made it success, I have maintained a eating healthy. I don't want to call it a diet, but I eat healthy. I avoid sugar. I limit sugar. I don't eliminate it, but I limit sugar. I focus on eating enough protein and not overeating when I'm at a meal. And I have exercised consistently for a year, and that is the longest I have ever been able to do an exercise program. The food part I've been doing for a year and a half. This is the longest I've ever been able to do anything. And the difference is that I do it because I want to take care of myself, not because the numbers on the scale are going to say a certain thing. Because if you're hung up on what the number on the scale says, the scale is going to screw with you. You can eat restricted calories all week and gain a pound. So then, I mean, I know for me, that would be enough to send me off to the Ben and Jerry's, like, oh, this doesn't work, I give up. But now I am so utterly obsessed with loving myself and taking care of my body and letting my body be the vehicle that I move around this life in, and like giving it the food that it needs and the exercise that it needs to be healthy. I'm obsessed with those metrics. How flexible am I? How strong am I? How good is my cardiovascular fitness? I am not, the scale moving is nice. I'm not going to lie. I love being a size 6. The fashion options are so much better. It's easier to move around the world, without a doubt. But the more important thing to me is that I'm going to live longer and live healthier. And I love that. Like, that is where the focus goes. So loving yourself as you are is key. Absolutely. Even if you're trying to intentionally lose weight, because you have to love yourself between now. It took me a year and a half to lose 180 pounds. I still had to love myself as a quote fat person for a long time before people would look at me now and not think I'm fat. Although by the BMI standard, I'm still like 1 point into the fat range. I have 7 more pounds to go. But, I'm building muscle, and that's what, like, that is the key. It is the self-love that will allow you to lose weight or not. Now, for people that choose to not lose weight, like my daughter is not there, she doesn't want to do it, I still say the same exact thing. Love yourself as you are. Love that body. Be grateful for that body. And it is perfectly fine if this is how you choose to navigate this life. This precious life that you have is yours. And if you choose to live it in a larger body and that makes you happy, I think wonderful. And we should all support that. Every person has a right to choose what to do with their bodies. Piercings, tattoos, plastic surgery, weight loss or weight gain, fast food or not fast food. It's their body, and people can deal with their stuff however they want to deal with it. Many, many people go from cradle to grave, never addressing their emotional health at all. That's their choice. Their choice. Never addressing any kind of things that a lot of us think are standard to address, but not everyone does, their choice.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'll give I'll give you the last word in a second, but I do feel like, we've hit on something really kind of magical here in that, we talked a little bit about that with age comes, knowledge and hopefully all this stuff.
Yeah.
I talked to somebody this morning who was saying, a coach, a friend of mine, and he was saying, I was getting down on myself a little bit about age and, are we accomplishing what we want? And he goes, look, dude, you have so much self-awareness for your age that you would think that that someone at a certain phase of life would have learned all this stuff and be open-minded open to all things. He goes, but you're forgetting all those people who reach a certain age and think they know everything. He goes, so, give yourself credit for being open to continuing to learn. Like people that reach a certain point and still don't get it because they think that at this point they've convinced themselves, I've seen it all, I know it all, I got it all, I got this. And it's like those are the people who aren't growing. So, just continue to learn, continue to grow, because that's the real secret. Not knowing everything.
No, we'll
Knowing
never know
everything isn't,
everything or even
yeah, we'll
close.
never know it. So I just want to share that really with the audience, because I know that a lot of listeners are constantly struggling with, am I learning enough? Do I know enough? And those are the seekers. And the
Mhm.
seekers are never going to be wrong, because they're always open to learning. But you like that?
Do.
Okay.
I'm a seeker. The seekers are my people. But I do want to caution the seekers.
Okay, so this will be something that we can hopefully kind of sum it up with.
Sure. I would say that anyone listening that is, things like that what I'm saying is resonating, these enlightening light bulb moments that we've had together are, impactful, and they're always trying to seek to learn and improve themselves. I want to say too, you are also perfect as you are. Just as we need to love our bodies as they are, love ourselves as we are, understand that the fact that you are a seeker is enough. That's enough. You are not a project that needs fixing. You were not born flawed and like somehow you've got to do this and accomplish that. Like, I'm going to India in a month to stay a week in an ashram. I am not going there to completely fix something that is wrong. I am
Yeah.
going to connect more with myself, to connect more with the universal, collective. And that is a beautiful thing. There's this, right now we're all just have so much access to pop psychology and all of these, resources about what's wrong with us. And the truth is, we're born perfect. And we are having a human experience, which involves making a ton of mistakes and being flawed as far as our personalities and our quirks and all of that. And that is all normal, to be expected, okay. And we can have patience for all that. And yes, growing and seeking is a wonderful thing. And I wouldn't be who I am without it. And I appreciate people that live that way. They're definitely my people. And also, don't get too down on yourself when you don't get it right, because that's just a part of the experience.
Thanks so much for tuning into Truth Tastes Funny. If you enjoyed the experience, please leave a 5-star review and share this podcast with your friends.